What's visible work and what's invisible work? Invisible work is the work that you do, the value that you add, or the results that you deliver that people don't see. And, I think usually it's fairly intuitive. When I say that rule to a room of women, usually there's kind of a collective sigh. And they say, oh, they have no idea what I do, right? If I left, they'd had to replace me with 2 people. And I say, that's not okay, because if you're not getting credit for your work, then either no one is or someone else is. So it now becomes your job, right? Literally, it's part of your job now to make that invisible work visible.
My name is Helen Appleby, and this is How to Corporate, my digital show dedicated to helping you identify what's holding you back so you can advance your career. Are you ready for today's topic? Well, let's get started. Welcome back. Welcome back to How to Corporate, the podcast dedicated to empower you, the working professional, so that you can better advance your career through other people's experiences. This is our mission. This is our purpose. This is our cause. Our focus today is around visible and invisible work. And I'm super excited to have my guest, Helen Appleby, on the show to guide us through this discussion. Helen, welcome to the show. And could you please introduce yourself and briefly share a little bit about your background?
Of course. Hello, fella. Thank you so much for the invite. It's great to be here on How to Corporate, very subject close to my heart. I am an executive coach and an author and a women's leadership trainer. And I'm the author of a book which is called The Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership. And really my mission is to help women navigate and succeed in corporate life, because when women navigate and succeed, it makes companies perform better. It makes it better for them, better for the men, and better for the company. So really helping women step into their power and reach really senior levels in corporate life by teaching them the things that, honestly, that I wish I'd known on my corporate journey, fella. Before doing this, I had my own corporate career. I've lived and worked in 6 countries and finished the corporate part of my career running $1 billion business, a global business. So I've walked the journey, and there were things, honestly, on that journey that I wish I'd known earlier and that weren't written down, even though I went on all the courses. And that was really the inspiration behind the unwritten rules of women's leadership, was to write them down. But there's also a chapter in the book, which is called The Afterword, which is for leaders and, or for men who want to help. So it's really a rally call for all of us to help improve performance by getting more women and more diversity into teams.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing that. Your focus, it's clearly necessary, right? It's important work that you're doing day in and day out. So we appreciate you for that, for sure. So from your perspective, right, you work in this space of helping and coaching women, right, in the workforce and to elevate themselves. From your perspective, the current state of the market, has it gotten better? Would you say that it's become more inclusive, right, for women in the workplace?
I think the intention has improved. The reality is that it's still a struggle. There's a 2022 McKinsey Lean In Women in the Workplace report, which has just come out, and they call this phase the Great Breakup. Women are really still struggling to break through the ranks, and there's this kind of particular, they call it the broken rung. Like the drop off of women making it more senior in the organization starts really early on in their career. And so, with them failing to get to a manager level, that then carries on all the way through to the C-suite. So 1 in 4 C-suite executives is a woman, and only 1 in 20 is a woman of color. And put another way, if you look at that data the other way, for every 100 men promoted at that entry level to manager, only 87 women are promoted and only 82 women of color are promoted. And so what we've seen over 2021 and 2022 is women leaving their workplaces. They're demanding more, they're not getting it, and they're leaving. So for every woman at director level who gets promoted, 2 women directors on average are leaving the company. So we have a long way to go.
Well, that's powerful data there that you shared. So it's almost like for every step forward, there's a step back, and the opportunities, they arise every blue moon, but so many folks are still being held back that they leave the companies that they're with in order to go seek out other opportunities elsewhere. So, still clearly.
Yeah, and those are average. That's average data, obviously. And so hopefully the women that are leaving to go somewhere better, are finding it there. And over the next few years, we will see it continue to improve. Because I do feel like I work with big companies all the time. I feel the intent, but, translating that into women in the C-suite takes time. It takes a long time to get people that senior. And you have to hang on to them and look after them and, have an environment where we can all succeed. So, yeah, much to be done.
Definitely. So then that really kind of brings us to the focus of our conversation, right? Which is invisible versus visible work. So, often I think at times we make the mistake thinking that if you just work hard, you get results, that should be good enough, right? To get the recognition that you're due or get the promotion that you're seeking. But let's be honest, right? That's not how it's always done, right? We know that's not how it's always done. And hard work alone will not always just get you to the mountaintop. So with this in mind, Helen, how would you define or maybe distinguish the difference between visible versus invisible work?
Thanks, Phil. I think this is a really important subject, and it's something that, I coach and teach on a lot. Because this is true for everyone, right? So my unwritten rule is there is visible work and invisible work, and we only get judged on our visible work. So just doing good work and hoping it will be noticed doesn't work. And honestly, in my work, I find that this particularly affects women. When we're young, we're very much trained culturally into this kind of good girl conditioning. And so, it was something that, a trap that I fell into in my career, which is just, the way that we played when we were at school. If you imagine how girls are taught to behave at school, sit down, be quiet, color in the lines, be a good girl, get good grades. And when you get good grades, you'll be at the top of the class and you'll be noticed. And what tends to happen is that we continue to play those rules and play that game when we get to work without realizing that it isn't enough. So invisible work is the work that you do, the value that you add, or the results that you deliver that people don't see. And, I think usually it's fairly intuitive. When I say that rule to a room of women, usually there's kind of a collective sigh and they say, oh, they have no idea what I do, right? If I left, they'd had to replace me with 2 people. And I say, that's not okay, because if you're not getting credit for your work, then either no one is or someone else is. So it now becomes your job, right? Literally, it's part of your job now to make that invisible work visible. So I say to them, sit down and write out, what is it that you do that is invisible? Make that list. And then make a list of the people that will be in the room or consulted.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing and learning something new, take a second to rate this episode and write a review. Oh, don't forget to share with a friend or a colleague. All right, back to the show.
So those are the people that need to know about your invisible work. And what happens then sometimes with women is they say, oh, now I have to self-promote. And, this is a tricky one. And it stopped me really for many years, making my work visible. And for me, the change, the shift came when I reframed that thought of, oh, I have to self-promote, and I changed it to, I want to educate them. So what I say to people is, what I say to women is, to make your invisible work visible, you have to educate. Take that list of stakeholders and educate them about the work that you're doing. So that might be through written updates. It might be through emails. It might be through a dashboard. It might be through, a newsletter. It might be through booking a meeting with them and giving them an update and asking them for advice. All of those ways are ways of educating people on the work that you do. And then, sometimes there are really small ways of doing it. I call these micro encounters. There are those moments when, maybe we're both on the Zoom call early. You and I arrive on the Zoom call early and there's no one else on. Or, maybe we're waiting for an Uber together on the way to a meeting, or we're in the elevator together. And if you're a senior leader in my organization and you say, hey, how are you, Helen? Mm-hmm. What women will often do is they'll say, I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Gosh, it's cold, isn't it? Right? I mean, I'm a Brit, so we always talk about the weather. But what I say to women is, you're no longer allowed to say, I'm fine, thanks. Use that micro encounter. Use that small moment. I can use that small moment between myself and Fella. And instead of saying, I'm fine, thanks, I say, great. The project that I've been working on, we've just had some really interesting interim results, and we're going to be coming to see you soon and asking for some money, or, asking for permission to go to the next stage, or, giving you an update and telling you how it's going to work in your part of the organization. And then I might also say, and so in your team who's been on the team has been super helpful too, really, really been able to represent your team and really participated. Thank you so much. And you see, what a different impression at that point, Fella, the senior manager in my organization, is left with of Helen. Instead of just, oh, Helen's nice and a Brit and talks about the weather. But like, Helen's working on this project, she's making progress, she's coming to see me soon, and that person from my team is, she's sharing the credit, and that person from my team is helping too. Maybe I can ask that person on my team about the project and learn more, but, I know that Helen's leading it. So very different. I'm starting to relationship build with you, you're starting to know about me, I'm building my brand, and I'm making my work visible. Do you see the distinction? That's so different, isn't it, from just, if I do good work, it'll be noticed.
Yeah, no, those are excellent examples. I think those are real examples that people can understand and relate to, right? I mean, how so many times do folks just say, oh, how's it going? And, it's fine. Just busy, right? Just very common.
Busy, yeah,
right. Well, of course, we're always busy, right? But taking the time to educate. Taking the time to share.
And it takes a little bit of preparation, honestly. It's a muscle that you build. So almost it's like you can help yourself by having, a little bit of thought around, if I see so-and-so, what would I say? Or if I see you walking down the corridor, if I see a senior leader walking down the corridor, and, oh, look, we must still both be going to that meeting and we're early, thinking through, what am I going to say? What's the thing that I want to share that is intentional and makes my work visible so that I don't miss this opportunity?
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, a few key words just come to mind just as you explain all that. I think just being intentional, right? Intentionality is a big factor. Educating, being strategic, right? Thinking about your response and preparing a little bit beforehand, especially, we know there'll be opportunities when we have maybe senior leaders visiting, right, your office, or you have a one-on-one meeting set up, or even again, just in passing, right, you're going to lunch, and it's not even just with maybe senior leaders, but just with your own direct manager. How do you weave that into the ongoing conversations that, you would think that, okay, well, my manager should know what I'm doing day in, day out, but not necessarily, right? Exactly.
Do they? Yeah. And
exactly.
like, why not set them up for success? And remember, it's not just senior leaders. Like, it really depends in where in the organization you are. That's why I'm so intentional about this thing about who will be in the room or consulted when your next role is discussed. You don't have to be doing this to everyone, but it's really who's important for the next step, your next move or your next promotion. That's your key stakeholders. Those are your strategic stakeholders.
Yeah, building sponsors. Building sponsors. So, and that's what starts right there, where when your name is brought up in those rooms, when you're not there, but it's almost like you are, because you filled the room with your presence. People can speak to the good work that you do, the value that you bring to the organization, because they've heard it either directly from you or they've heard it through other folks as well. And it's a no-brainer when those opportunities come up to say that, you know what, Helen does a really great job. She's an awesome leader within the organization. She brings all this value, and it just all rattles off the tongue. So, but that's
sponsorship is a big one, honestly, fella. And again, for women and often for people of color, finding mentors and sponsors is more difficult, right? If you look up in the organization and people don't look like you, then often, and it's natural, people support people that remind them of themselves when they were younger.
100%.
So if we don't look like people above us when they were younger, then we have to ask. We have to ask for mentorship. We have to ask for advice and build relationships really thoughtfully. And mentors are people who share their journey with you. And they are career accelerators. There is like finding someone who's done it before and having them say to you, don't do this, do this. You want to make sure you do this, and this is the pitfall. Can really help. What should I do in my career next? How should I handle this? How should I build this skill? They can really help. But sponsors, exactly as you said, sponsors are different from mentors. Sponsors are people that don't talk to you about their journey. They talk about you when you're not in the room. And exactly so they can they can speak you into rooms that you can't get into. But in order to do that, they're risking their own political capital by saying, Helen would be amazing in that role, or I think we should consider Fella for that role. They're risking their own reputation. And that's why it's difficult to really ask for sponsorship. You don't know me. Will you advocate for me when I'm not in the room? Well, not really, because I don't know you. So, which is why the whole building relationships and having them know about you and understand your work and understand the journey that you've been on and the results you deliver, the value that you add and the work that you do helps so much with getting people to talk about you when you're not there.
One of the questions I had here is about branding, right? And how does one maybe think about, or how does branding play a factor when you think about showcasing your work, whether it be internally or externally? And maybe branding and relationship building go, hand in hand, but I'm interested in your perspective of how that comes into the play.
So you have a brand, okay? Unless you're very junior in the organization, you have a brand in the organization. So, the way I teach this on the course is, why not manage that brand? Why not know what it is? And why not ask people what your brand currently is? What are 3 adjectives that would describe my brand? And then think about, what do you want it to be? Do you want to be known for developing talent, or for turning around businesses, or for your attention to detail, or for your ability to network? And once you've decided what you want your brand to be, how can you live it, be it, earn it, and speak about it? And so when you're giving, updates to senior leaders or speaking about the work that you're doing, if, for instance, so one of the things that was really important to me as a leader in business was my ability to grow talent. And so, when I talked about the work that I was doing, or when I was in conversations with senior leaders, it would often be around, this is how we've put the project team together, and this is how, we're growing and developing them. And, this is what I'm seeing from your folks that are on the team and how they're growing and developing. I talked about talent development a lot. And that's because it was very intentional around, that was how I wanted my brand, that was the impact I wanted to make. I mean, it was genuine. It wasn't just, I want to pretend this. It was genuinely important to me. So
Sure.
I think knowing what your current brand is, deciding what you want your brand to be, being it and speaking it as part of this, making your work visible is super important and is a real opportunity. Because like I said, if you don't manage your brand, someone else is managing it, and you're leaving it to chance what they say about you when you're not in the room.
Very well said. Very well said. A common saying that was shared with me once, and I repeat very often, is no one should be able to tell your story better than you do. And to me, that's what branding is all about. It's telling your story.
Yeah. So, absolutely. Right. Yep. And also, I think, when it comes to mentors and sponsors and your stakeholders, is where are you up to now and where do you want to be? What do you want to do next? What are the opportunities that you're interested in future? So it's kind of your story. I completely agree. It's your story today and how you want to continue to write your story in the future. I would be really interested in this kind of opportunity. Would you keep me on your radar? And if you hear about something like that, could you let them know that I'd be interested, or let me know and, I'll go and talk to them. I would really appreciate that. That kind of conversation is really important.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing and learning something new, take a second to rate this episode and write a review. Oh, don't forget to share with a friend or a colleague. All right, back to the show. My next question here is, should people focus mainly on projects or initiatives that can generate quantitative results versus qualitative, right? So we think about the visible versus invisible work. And is it all about the numbers? Is it all about the data, what people can measure, right? Should people just focus on that? Because there's a lot of work that we do that's more qualitative, that is hard to measure, but seems like it's important. What's your take on that?
I think it's often, if you sit and give it some thought, it's often more possible to add quantitative measures to qualitative tasks. So, I organized a successful function. I organized a successful function for 300 people with, 90% of folks who turned up, and 4 speakers, and it was under budget. That kind of stuff. Often you can quantify, to your point about, is it quantifiable? And to be honest, fella, I would say focus on what you're measured on. Right? What gets measured gets done. Getting some clarity on how it is you'll be judged and what your objectives are for the year, and focusing on them, and then not only delivering them, but over-delivering them, looking for opportunities to exceed expectations. If we just do what's in our objectives for the year, then we will meet expectations. So what are the opportunities to exceed them? And are they valuable? And, if you're doing other kind of community work or work that's outside your job, can you get that added into your job objectives? Is that valued by your boss? And can it be counted at the end of the year towards your performance? So I think it's a great discussion to have with the boss, but ultimately you want to be really clear how will your success be judged, and do that, or renegotiate that.
Yeah, that's really, really well said. And what gets measured gets done, right? A very common saying, and it is very factual as well. And a really key takeaway, that you shared here, I think, is being able to define success. When you read a job description, it's just not what's in the description. Have a strong understanding of what success looks like in your role, and maybe even measuring yourself against other people in the past who are considered successful and what they do, and what are they doing that's not written down in that quote unquote job description. What qualities are they bringing to the table?
I think that's why that's why job objectives are really important, right? Your specific objectives for the year are different from your job description. And that's where I think the focus is. Like, a job description is important, but what you'll get measured on is not really your job description. It'll be on your objectives. So the what you do and the how you do it. And those two pieces of thinking should be captured in your objectives and in your development plan.
Yep.
So focusing there will make it a really powerful conversation with your line manager.
Yeah, 100%. So, you have a whole book, right? The Unwritten Rules of Women's Leadership. Like, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, I think, this conversation, I can tell you definitely have a lot of inspiration around the subject, but I'm curious just what inspired you to write this?
Yeah, it's a book and it's a course and it's a podcast too. It's a real passion. And what inspired me, Philip, is a little bit of what I talked about at the beginning, really, that sense of being in corporate life and struggling. Like, it was hard. My dad told me that girls can do anything that boys can do. And I believed him and I did. But, I just felt that there were moments when, I took conflict too personally and I was, in the bathroom trying to cry silently. And, I struggled to get the mentors and sponsors because I didn't know how to ask and I wasn't asked. And then once I had kids, I often felt like I left work too early and got home too late. And I only lived 10 minutes from work. So it was really that sense that it was harder than I thought it was going to be. And all the courses that I went on didn't teach me what I really needed to know. And so over the years, I figured it out. I figured it out by reading, by learning from the women that had gone ahead of me, and just through my own experience. But I thought, wow, a lot of this stuff is stuff that I wish I'd known earlier. So I wrote it down. Right? They were unwritten, so I wrote them down. So they are the written rules now. They're my rules anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess my invitation to women is, read it, step into your power, write your own rules and succeed. And then also help, right? Look behind you, lift as you rise. Sisterhood is really important to me. How can you help other women? How can you help women of color? How can you help people that don't look like you? How can you lift as you rise? And what does that look like? Who do you mentor? Who do you sponsor? Because, mentors only have to be 2 steps ahead of us in our journey. It's not like you can only mentor when you're the CEO. We are all leaders. We're all 2 steps ahead of someone. So is there, even if you're junior, is there a niece or a nephew? Is there an intern? And then as you get more senior, is there someone that's starting out? Who are you helping? Whose career are you taking an interest in? Who are you having coffee with? Who are you talking about when they're not in the room? And how can we do this together?
Oh, that's a very powerful message. Very well said. And I think you laid it out very excellently. Like I said, mentorship can start right in front of you, and you don't have to be a senior leader or a manager or a leader of people, right? To be able to offer advice and help the person next to you, to your left, to your right, forward, backward, etc. Yep. So, that's what starts. And that was the inspiration for me, honestly, with this podcast. And clearly you had the similar inspiration with your book and your courses and all the things that you do. And, this conversation right here is exactly what this is. It's giving back. It's offering a sense of mentorship for our listeners. And, so no, I completely agree with you. Oh, awesome.
Fabulous. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Really, really fantastic. Enjoyed this conversation. I did want to definitely give you the opportunity to share more about just how folks can reach you, whether it be on LinkedIn or your website, for anybody who wants to reach out.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, fella. I'm Helen Appleby on LinkedIn. And you'll see the unwritten rules stuff there. And then Helen Appleby Coaching on Instagram. And HelenApplebyCoaching.com is the details of the course. And the book is available on Amazon and podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I'll definitely share that in the show notes for everybody listening today. So guys, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, peace.
Thanks, fella.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more content, click the link in my bio to follow How to Corporate on all social media platforms. Until next time, keep building.